Hello, YouTubers. Well, first of all, let me thank those people who sent video responses to the last video, and all of the people who sent letters and comments relating to the subject. All very interesting and good material for me to take forward in whatever other way I can find to do it. So I thank you very much for that. Some long time ago, last summer, a gentleman who has now become a friend wrote a paper for his PhD in which he was talking about intergenerational communication, really, and that's a subject I will go on to in a moment. But in the process of his research, he obviously sort of gave some figures, and I'll read one little bit of what he says that's relevant. He said, web technologies provide greater opportunities for online social interaction and perhaps enable a wider sense of involvement in society. However, seemingly intractable issues of access remain. For instance, these technologies could particularly benefit the older members of developed societies, but their use remains a minority activity, which of course is what we've been talking about. He then goes on to give some figures and the obviously reference to the sources of his information. Figures about internet use in the UK show that only 52% of those aged between 55 and 64 go online, whilst a mere 15% of those over 65 years do. Similar minority figures are apparent in the US and Europe. So we're talking about 85% of people over the age of 64, 65 who are not involved in the internet, and that's a surprisingly high figure. And of course, it is those people that we are trying to get to, isn't it? Many of you have told about your inside your families how you have brought the subject up with older members of your family, and some with success and some with resistance, and that's perfectly the resistance is perfectly understandable in many cases, because I can assure you that us old people are just as pig-headed and resistant to advice and instruction as young people are. Very, very much so. After all, we've had a lot more practice at it, so we are better at it. So that's perfectly understandable. And of course, there's a multitude of reasons why this 85% either don't want to, can't afford, or have no interest in it at all. But I do believe that there are many people in that age group who may well be lonely and isolated, and this form of communication would be so beneficial to them. However, we will all try to do what we can, and let us hope that we can get some results in a small number of those people. What I'm about to say, which I'm somewhat reluctant to say, does have a bearing on intergenerational communication. I don't know quite how to say this. It may sound that I am being very boastful, and I am not. But when I first clicked that little button to upload a video to YouTube, for some reason unbeknown to me, the media world went crazy, and not only was I bombarded with attention from them, um, but of course also YouTube got such massive free advertisement and exposure as a result. I wouldn't like to pass an opinion that they wouldn't have developed to where they are now without that exposure, but it was a factor. You might want an answer to the question as to why I was upset by all the media attention. You might think that it would be something that would be welcomed. Well, had I have climbed Mount Everest, or had I have done something to benefit humanity, perhaps I might have wanted to glory in it, but all I had done was click a button to upload a terrible first try video to this particular website. And so what they were saying really was that how wonderful that an old man had the ability to do this, and I didn't find that very extraordinary, and I didn't think it deserved any accolades of any sort. I can tell you now that this media attention was extremely stressful, and if stress is an illness, then or stress causes an illness, then that is what it did to me. And I very nearly found that button that said close account, which fortunately, in light of what's happened since, I didn't do. And my good friend Mike, who runs the website, came to my help, and I sent and he fielded all the replies to all the media people who were clamouring for attention. I had to deal with the phone calls and the doorstepping of newspapers and things, but that I could handle. So anyway, that be as it may, I think as a result, well, yes, I think as a result that this website now has a bigger spread of the ages, from the very old like myself to the very young, and I see that as a good thing. Yes, I do see that as a good thing, and of course all of this is discussed in my friend Dave's paper about intergenerational communication. He looks at all of my videos and the comments, and he analyses them all, and he came over with his wife in the summertime with his cameras and did some filming and asked me loads of questions, and that was to support his paper. So that's wonderful, and there's a lot to talk about intergenerational communication, but I think it's unique. I mean, in what I'd call real life, old and young do not mix, other than within their own families, and even there perhaps isn't a great deal of communication. Yes, teachers are obviously older than their students, and people who run youth groups, the people there will be older than their students, and perhaps, well, obviously in the workplace, when young people go into work, there will be older people there, but there won't be the wide range of ages that there are now on YouTube. So I see YouTube as a workplace, if you like, where the old and young can communicate, not necessarily by speech or the written word, but the very fact of observing each other is a form of communication, and I would like to think that by doing that we are getting a better understanding. There's an interesting quote here in his paper, which if I can find it, I have singled out because What does he say? Intergenerational research has shown that when face-to-face communication occurs between generations outside the family, it tends to be initially plagued by mutually held negative stereotypes. And then, he says, young adults tend to think of older people as being of ill health, asexual or impotent, unattractive, suffering from mental decline, being useless, isolated, lonely, poor, and depressed. Well, I would like to hope that all young adults don't think that, but that is certainly a stereotype of us older people. But conversely, it goes on, if I can just find it, missing out quite a few bits. Older people, for their part, are apt to consider young people as immature, naive, unwise and unworldly, irresponsible, disrespectful, lazy, self-centered, noisy, disruptive and delinquent. Well, again, that covers all the adjectives, doesn't it? And let us hope that that isn't entirely true. But my point really is that I don't think there has ever been a place like YouTube or maybe other vlogging sites where there has been this amount of difference between the generations. And let us hope that if we can set some examples, we can enjoy this communication and thereby make, hopefully, the world a better place. So, crikey, as usual, far too long. So I'll leave it there with my thanks for your help in my project, crusade, or interest, or whatever you like to call it. I will be continuing to see if I can get some written word out somewhere and quoting some of the remarks that you have made to me, where possibly older people would read it, and thereby that might encourage them to get involved in the world of the internet. So, as usual, I'll say goodbye and see you all again very soon. Goodbye.